Welcome to this study of 3 John. The epistle of 3 John is named after the traditional author, John the Apostle. The similarity of the salutation and conclusion certainly argue for Johannine authorship. The date of 3 John is closely related to the dating of 1 and 2 John. It was probably written shortly after 1 John, which warns of some of the difficulties that had developed in this region of the churches. Some have suggested that 2 and 3 John were letters to specific churches that also included 1 John, but there's no evidence for this theory. These 3 short epistles, particularly 2 and 3 John, relate to every church and Christian experience. Evidence seems to point to a dating around AD 90. The recipients of 3 John, it is addressed to Gaius the Beloved. There are 3 other men in the New Testament that have the name Gaius, but there is no evidence to identify this Gaius to one of those men, Gaius of 3 John, with those that are found in the Scriptures. It was not an uncommon name. He was a man who was loved by John. He walked in the faith and truth of the Scriptures. He showed hospitality to strangers, particularly to travelers, to itinerant Christian preachers or teachers. He received the highest of commendation for his love for others. He may have been converted under the ministry of John in the region of Ephesus, as indicated by his being addressed as one of John's children. This epistle is written to him and the church in which he was active. It, of course, would have applied to a broader audience also, as these epistles were circulated and shared. The epistle indirectly addresses Diotrephes with a rebuke and Demetrius with a commendation. How do we read 3 John? Imagine that you're a part of a wonderful Christian community with flourishing churches. You have had the opportunity to listen to many good teachers throughout the years. The churches have grown qualitatively and quantitatively. There are many different men in leadership. Some of the men are filled with love, truth, and hospitality. Other men are prideful. They're despotic. They have an attitude of superiority and have an exclusive attitude that only those whom they approve should be a part of the fellowship. One man in particular, Diotrephes, does not accept itinerant teachers because he wants to be preeminent. He wants to be in control. He wants to be able to direct. He refuses to listen to the instructions of the Apostle John. This conflict is beginning to cause divisions in the church. You read the epistle so that you might know what the right thing is to do at the right time in the right situation. You want to know what John the elder statesman has to say on this matter. You want to do the will of God by walking in God's truth and love. A key verse is found in verse 11. It says, "Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but imitate what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God." The argument, the main subject, the idea of 3 John is that John argues that the church should support traveling missionaries and imitate good conduct. Yes, as you imagine or think about reading this epistle, you understand that there are good and bad in all things. There are good leaders, humble servants who obey the Word of God, genuinely seek God's will in the lives of other people. But there are also those who just want to be first, who want the sense of leadership and the affirmation to their pride and to their ego. There are a few purposes in this short epistle: to inform them of John's plan to visit them, to commend Gaius for his hospitality, to rebuke and warn Diotrephes for his sinful behavior, and the people to be able to be warned about him. and then to commend men like Demetrius for their good testimony. 4 themes: walk in truth, walk in love, cherish the brethren, and remember to look and notice people's character. An outline of 3 John. John the elder greets the beloved Gaius, whom he loves in truth. Verses 2 through 4, John prays for and rejoices in their spiritual walk. Verses 5 through 8, John commends them for their faithfulness to each other and to others. In verse 9, John warns of Diotrephes. Diotrephes must be prevented from espousing his lifestyle and his message. John rebukes Diotrephes in verse 10 and says that he will confront him when he visits. Verse 11, John exhorts them to do good. Verse 12, John commends this humble servant, this good man, Demetrius. And then in verses 13 and 14, John affirms his desire to visit them and spend quality fellowship with them.